Hey guys, Kribben Governor from the Gut Health Gurus podcast. I've got a background in food science, and my sidekick, James Shadrach, who is all psychology, is unfortunately away today. And we have an amazing guest, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with this man who we literally connected on Facebook because I was just loving what he was putting out to the world, and I just had to have that conversation. And so, Nathan Waltz, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kribben. Well, thanks so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
My pleasure. And Nathan, what we do at the start of every show is we ask the question, who is Nathan Waltz?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So I am I'm a health coach, kind of health/life coach. And the way I got into it is kind of interesting. I never kind of planned to be a health coach, but I had a corporate career for about 20 years. And about 10 years into that career, I started having a downward slide in my health. And it started out with occasional fatigue. Occasionally, I didn't sleep well. Occasionally, I would have indigestion. And then over those 10 years, that kind of became my new normal. And my health was just kind of slowly trickling downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And I took relatively good care of myself, but there were a lot of things I didn't do too. So I thought, back then I thought, eat pretty good food and that's kind of all it takes. But I wasn't doing a good job with sleep. I drank too much on the weekends. I exercised and ate pretty well, but I just was neglecting the other things. I wasn't managing stress. And over the years, I just started feeling tired all the time. I woke up tired. I kind of dragged through the day, had to drink a bunch of coffee to make it through the day. And, I'd eat lunch, and after lunch for an hour or two, it'd just be kind of like in food coma, not very productive. And then I started having some anxiety and brain fog. And that's when it really started to impact me. I could for years, I could get by on coffee or some kind of energy drink. But once I started having brain fog, it made it very hard to function in my role. And I go to my doctor every year and just say, hey, he was a really cool guy, and I had a great relationship with him. I'd just be like, something's not right. I'm tired all the time. My sleep's not well. And I was actually, at the time, I was kind of hoping he would give me like a sleeping pill or something. Because my sleep. It got to a point where I was just never sleeping. And looking back, I'm grateful that he never did that I never went down that road of having to rely on sleeping pills. And he just kind of chalked it up to too much stress. He's told me to take it easier. And, that only goes so far. So this went on for several years, and eventually I got recommended to an integrative medicine doctor.
Right.
And so when this friend of mine told me about this doctor, she told me how he took all these tests, tested her hormones and vitamins and minerals. I was just like, they have doctors like that? And I was just like, I got to see this guy. So I made an appointment, and he spent an hour with me asking all these questions. And we got done with our talk, and he was like, I think you have Lyme disease.
Oh, God.
Lyme disease, the only thing I knew about Lyme disease is that you get it from ticks. And I never found a tick on me, so I didn't think I had it. Well, my test came back, and I tested positive for Lyme disease. I had Candida. So for those that don't know, it's a fungal overgrowth in your intestines. I had mercury toxicity. My hormones were super low, especially like my testosterone was really low. A lot of minerals and vitamins were low. And I was actually really happy. I was like, okay, now I know what's wrong, so I can address it. And, I'll take some antibiotics for the Lyme disease. I'll take a bunch of supplements for the other stuff. And, in a couple months, I'll be all better. But fast forward 6 months down the road, I was doing much worse. My neurological symptoms just got worse and worse. I was having more anxiety. I was having some paranoia. And it was just really hard for me to focus and kind of stay on point with my job. And that's when I started doing a whole bunch of research. And I did different diets. I went vegetarian for a while. I was convinced, like, okay, I ate too much meat. Meat's like the enemy here. And so I went completely vegetarian. And that didn't work. I just got skinnier and skinnier. I was just losing all this weight. And eventually I bumped into a mutual friend of ours and a mutual mentor, Dr. Jack Cruz.
Awesome.
So I came across one of his blog posts in my nightly Google searching. And, my brain wasn't working so well then. And I had a tough time reading the post. But I was just like, this guy's different than everybody else that I've come across. Mm-hmm. So I started following his protocols. And within 2 weeks, I was feeling better than I had in a long, long time. And I haven't looked back since. And so, it took me some time to really kind of turn things around, but I stayed on that path. I ended up going through some big life changes and went through a bad divorce and kind of decided like, you know what, this job's not helping me. I'm not passionate about it. It's good income and good benefits, but I'm not happy. I'm stressed out. So I decided to leave my job, and I really loved my journey of turning my health around. I'm like, you know what, other people can use this help too. So I've decided to leave my job, and that's how I ended up doing what I do today, being a health coach, and I do some speaking as well. So just like you, my goal is really to educate other people, help them, take their power back when it comes to their health, and help them understand that their health is really in their hands and not in a doctor's hands. So if you break a bone or slice your arm open or something like that, then by all means go to a doctor. But if you're dealing with a chronic issue, doctors can't do a whole lot, and it's really up to you to kind of create a new lifestyle that's going to improve your health, not just in the short term, but for the rest of your life.
I'm with you, Nathan, 100% on what you're saying. I have a very similar journey to what you've been through. So if you don't mind me asking, how old are you at the moment?
I'm 47.
You're 47. So you've got a couple of years on me, probably a good 6 years on me. But I have a very similar story, and I think lots of men are probably going through something very similar to what you've been through and myself have been through as well.
Yeah.
So what were you actually doing in the corporate world at the time when you left?
I was doing operations management. So
Right.
I was in federal IT consulting. It was, it was very fast paced, and it was high stress. And I worked with a lot of really brilliant people, but I was just never really kind of passionate about it. But there were certain components of the job that I did enjoy, and some things I do miss. The working with people, but I don't miss the stress of it, and working long hours and doing calls on holidays when everyone else is relaxing, stuff like that.
That's it. And I had a career. We got probably about 15 years before I pulled the plug on the corporate world as well. I was in the food industry for a good 15 years before I stopped to start Nourish Me Organics. And
interesting. What were you doing in the food industry?
So all sorts of stuff. So I started off as a product development technologist, a flavorist, quality assurance manager, then eventually food scientist, senior food scientist. Then I went into procurement, and I finished my career as a procurement manager. And I think as you move up that chain, the level of stress just exponentially rises, and the expectation of work hours and commitment certainly goes up. You definitely get paid more, but there is a price to pay for getting more money, and your health suffers. And
it's a definite trade-off.
It's a definite trade-off, and I found myself in a very similar boat to yourself, struggling with anxiety and depression, which led to me almost taking my life. Same thing, marriage collapsed. Marriage collapsed. Fortunately, I'm really sorry what happened to you in terms of your divorce. Fortunately for me, I was able to patch up the marriage and get back
Oh, good.
home. I was away from home for about a year, and that's when I really struggled with the depression, and that's where...
When you say away from home, doing business travel?
No. I literally left home. So I've got 3 kids, and got to a point where my wife and I just pulled the plug. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I left home. I was living in an apartment by myself.
Okay.
And that's where it was really dark. So many times that I just had misery. And then eventually I got bullied out of the workplace because I guess everything was just falling around me. My boss was bullying me. They harassed me to a point where I had to leave. I just couldn't
Wow.
stand it anymore. You know, they performance manage you and they do all these things and make your life really difficult and get to a point where, yeah, it's either you leave or you take your life, because it's just, you just can't live that way. You know, it's
Right.
a miserable place to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear that you turned things around too.
Yeah.
And, one thing I often say to people is, getting Lyme disease and having my wife cheat on me were
Mm.
two of the best things that ever happened to me, because they got me to where I am today. And if I didn't have that big push, I'm sure you can relate. I believe that the universe is always giving us signs on whether or not we're on the right track.
Yes.
And the universe over the years gave me a lot of signs, but I was blind to them. So it gave me a very huge sign, with my health and my marriage, that, I can only see that and react to it in one way or another. So I'm grateful that it happened and things worked out in the end. And, life is very interesting how we get to these different stages in our lives.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. I'm with you. I mean, in those moments, it's really hard and it's dark and it's hard to find a way out, but the signs are all there and the pathways to get out of that darkness are there as well. And the right people coming at the right moment definitely help as well. The right information coming at the right moment. So for you, it was Dr. Jack Kruse. So what are some of the, I guess, the early tenets that you adopted in your own life that you saw immediate benefits? And I know he's a genius. I mean, in terms of the information that he puts out. So how did you decipher quite complex scientific material into kind of actionable steps?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was I made dietary changes, because at the time that was my mindset, that it's all diet. It's got to be like my diet that's causing me all these issues. So I've got to find the right diet. So the first thing I really searched out was, okay, what does he recommend eating? And he recommends a seafood-based diet. He calls it the Epi-Paleo RX.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was actually like super psyched at the time, because I had been eating like a ton of brown rice and all these vegetables. I was eating a plant-based diet and I was constantly starving. I was super emaciated. I would eat all the time. I was always hungry and I was miserable. And then all of a sudden, I read like I should be eating like a lot of fat and protein. I'm like, hell yeah. So I just started eating like a ton of fish and animal food again. And psychologically, that was huge, just because you know how important food is. And when you're eating the right food and it makes you feel good, that's a really big thing. So it was very satisfying and satiating. And I started kind of gaining some weight back. I became very insecure of how I looked, because I was already a thin guy as it was. So I weighed, I'm not sure what it is in kilos, I guess about 90 kilos. And then I went down to about 70 kilos.
Wow.
So I didn't have a lot to lose. And I was just super emaciated. And, people thought I had cancer. So that was the first thing. The other thing I started doing right away was cold. So within 2 weeks of discovering Jack Kruse, I was doing full body cold submersion in my bathtub. And, I had just a lot of pain from the inflammation from Lyme, like kind of up in here, my upper body. I was just in constant pain all the time. So the cold offered a huge relief on that. And it just started making me feel better. And I could tell my hormones were getting better. I could tell my testosterone was getting better. I started having muscle tone again. And, other things, when you're a guy, your testosterone is working better.
Yeah.
So those are really kind of the first two things.
I was going to suggest so you get a bit of a surprise in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're gonna ask me a question.
Yeah. Have you dipped your toe in cold thermogenesis?
Oh yeah. I love it. I mean,
nice.
If we could take a step back, the big kind of realization for me is being a food scientist, food guy. Having this, I guess, overcomplicated paradigm on what food actually is. So Jack, for me, really simplified the whole equation, which is, the mitochondria, and you're essentially, according to Jack, using electrons to produce a DC electric current. So you're stripping electrons out of food, and then your mitochondria produces energy from that, the proton gradient and the whole complex interaction that happens there. So it was just having this overcomplicated, thinking about fats and proteins and carbs and all that jargon, and just really simplifying it to me to understand what food really does and what it does in the mitochondria. And then it was the cold, and the cold thing was really hard at the start for me, but now I crave the cold. And just to give you a heads up, we are going through an absolute cold snap in Melbourne at the moment. It is freezing.
Okay. What kind of temps are we talking about?
According to our standards, anyway, not like Canada or something like that. But we're getting up. It's probably wake up in the morning and it's like maybe 8 degrees or something this morning.
Okay.
Yeah, so
wow.
it's pretty cold, but I will still do my ice showers daily. So
nice.
Yep, I'll do a 6-minute ice shower, and that makes me feel amazing. And then I have a gym membership just at a local gym, which is on the beach.
Okay. So, cool. So the gym is everything's outdoors?
Mainly outdoors.
Oh,
so
awesome.
most of the equipment is all outdoors. So there's no blue light toxicity. Like,
it's awesome.
Getting blasted by blue light. So I'm training outside, essentially overlooking the bay on the beach and getting the sunlight. But then I can finish a training session and literally jump into the ocean, which is absolutely freezing at the moment.
Okay.
Do maybe like 6 minutes or something in the freezing cold, and then jump into a sauna. So that's my
oh, wow. I love it.
My daily routine is the ice showers, and then once a week I'll do a gym training session.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I think we're on the same page here, man. Like totally.
Yeah,
and
totally,
so
100%.
I know in terms of your health coaching, the teaching that you do tend to focus on the mitochondria quite a lot. And I think this is a very exciting area of research, and particularly understanding what mitochondria are, what they do. So how about we jump into mitochondria and what are mitochondria, what's their function, and how do we optimize our mitochondria for optimal health?
Yeah, so the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So that's kind of like the one thing most people remember from high school science. I'm not sure what they teach in Australia, but
same.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one thing, but they don't really. They teach kind of like the scientific part of it, but they don't teach the practical part of it. So I kind of like never understood, like, your mitochondria make all the energy in your body. So if you want to like just be energetic, you need healthy mitochondria. If you want to, if you break a bone, you need healthy mitochondria to create the energy to regenerate that. So it's kind of like the engine in your car. Mm-hmm. So it's, this is not my analogy. Jack Kruse uses this, so I want to give him full credit for it. Mm-hmm. But, if you have engine problems, putting like a higher octane fuel in your car isn't going to make it run any better. You've got to fix the engine. Mm-hmm. So mitochondrial health is foundational to good health. And here's the thing, food can't fix it. So you can be, eating the best diet in the world, but if you have poor mitochondrial health, you're going to have to do some other interventions to fix your mitochondria. Mm-hmm. So a kind of a big killer today is, you mentioned it before about working out outside. You're not getting blasted with all the blue light like I do in my gym. Mm-hmm. So I avoid going to the gym as much as possible, but it's the only place where I can lift heavy weights and do the sauna. But anyway, so all this blue light is actually reducing our melatonin levels. And melatonin plays a very vital role in our mitochondrial health. So when you have lower mitochondria, you're going to have lower melatonin, you're going to have poor mitochondrial health. So one of the first keys is really optimizing your melatonin levels. So blocking blue light. So I'm not sure what kind of, do you have blue tech lenses in those glasses?
This is a blue light blocking lens as well. I don't have problems with my eyesight. I just wear it purely for the light.
Okay. Yeah. So, wearing blue blocking glasses, if you spend a lot of time on a computer, especially at night, And at night, you also have to cover up your skin too, because you have
Mm.
photoreceptors in your skin. So you can have your eyes protected, but if you're walking around in shorts and a t-shirt, you can have a reduction in melatonin. So that's going to impact the quality of your sleep. It's going to impact the quality of your mitochondria. So step one is really block artificial blue light, especially LED and fluorescent light. And all of our screens are lit using LED lights. So that frequency of light, it turns off your body's production of melatonin. So that's one thing. And plus, it's sleep. When you get a good deep sleep, that's when you can kind of repair and turn over your damaged mitochondria. So another good thing is intermittent fasting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, intermittent fast, just 24-hour fast or less. And that's also going to help you repair and grow more mitochondria. Exercise is really good for that.
Mm-hmm.
Something you said you do after you go in the ocean, you go in the sauna.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is really super good for your mitochondria as well. For food, there's one thing that you can kind of help have stronger cell membranes, and that's seafood, because seafood's really high in DHA, which is not in all of your cell membranes. So that's going to also improve your mitochondrial health. You can also use DHA to convert the power from sun, the photons, convert that energy into your electrons, which feed your mitochondria to create ATP. And then the cold, taking a cold shower, going in the ocean, that actually makes your mitochondria more efficient so they can make more ATP. When you have more ATP, you have more energy, your body can do more things.
That's really exciting. And I think with the cold, there's a really actionable steps in. I think it's pretty easy to follow those steps, and certainly I'm a huge believer of it. Now, how about when Jack talks about with cold and uncoupling? Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the reasons cold works, so there are two kind of mitochondrial haplotypes. There's tightly coupled, which in tightly coupled makes a whole lot of energy, whereas loosely coupled, some of that energy gets converted into heat. So people that evolved on the equator are tightly coupled because they don't have to make a lot of heat because it's hot all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a lot more predators they had to run from. So they have to have the ability to be able to really turn on the gas when they need to. Now, people that evolved further from the equator in northern climates, their mitochondria, instead of making 100% ATP, some of that gets converted into heat to keep you warm in the cold. So what happens is when you go in the cold, so when you go in a cold bath, it causes your mitochondria to release something to warm you up. So when you shiver, do you know what that is?
No idea.
You release it. So it's infrared heat.
Oh, wow.
So like if you've ever gone to like a party, when you first get there, the room's not that hot. But then an hour goes by, it fills up with more people. All of a sudden, the room is super hot.
Yeah.
That's from everyone's infrared heat. So your body's putting off this infrared heat. You can't see it, but that's what heats up the. So when your body goes in cold, you start to shiver. So your mitochondria release this infrared heat, and what that does is you have all these mitochondria in your cell. It's kind of hard to imagine because you can't even see a cell. This is all at the subatomic or very microscopic level, but you have anywhere from a couple hundred to several thousand mitochondria in a cell. They release this infrared heat, and water in a cell behaves differently than water outside of a cell. But kind of one example is, what happens when you put a bottle of water in a freezer?
Does it expand?
It expands, right? Yeah. So in a cell, when you heat up that water, it contracts. And when it contracts, it brings the mitochondria closer together. So your mitochondria have 5 proteins. They're called cytochromes, and they tunnel electrons. So when you eat food or, when you get energized from the sun, your food gets broken down into electrons. So the electrons go from one cytochrome to the next. And then the last one is the ATPase, and it literally spins. So there are electrons and protons, which are hydrogen protons, that go through that to make it spin, and it creates ATP. Now, electrons do something called tunneling, where they kind of jump from one to the next. So they kind of disappear from here, and they magically reappear here. Yes. Now, the further apart they get, the less efficient they tunnel. So 1 angstrom, if you increase the distance by 1 angstrom, you decrease their efficiency by a factor of 10.
What's
So to let everyone,
what's an
so an
angstrom?
angstrom is super, super tiny. So
Yeah.
so most people know how small a millimeter is, right? It's like super, super tiny.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 1,000,000 nanometers in a millimeter. So try to imagine breaking up that millimeter into 1,000,000 parts. Super tiny, right?
Tiny.
There are 10 angstroms in a nanometer.
Oh, wow. It's tiny.
So it's super, super tiny. So when you get in the cold, you're moving those cytochromes closer together just by an angstrom or two, or maybe 3. And then that significantly increases the efficiency. You're making more ATP. So that's why, like, a lot of professional athletes have been doing it for years, because
Yes.
it really rapidly speeds up their muscle recovery.
Yes.
And it's good to speed up injury. So the reason for that is that, it's rapidly decreasing inflammation, but it's also making those muscles more efficient. It's making your mitochondria more efficient, so you're making more energy to do different things.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes we could jump into now after that beautiful explanation of mitochondria. So where do we jump? So is the gap between that, is that heteroplasmy?
Oh, so heteroplasmy is your percentage of mutated mitochondria. So as you age, you increase in heteroplasmy by about 10% every decade.
Right.
So we all have a different starting point, and it really depends on your mother. So if your mother and your mother's mother were super healthy, you know that you're starting off at a very good starting point. You have a lot of healthy mitochondria. Now, if your mother wasn't as healthy, you're going to have fewer healthy mitochondria. So you're starting out at a higher heteroplasmy rate. Now, here's the thing. You can get by on a lot of mutated mitochondria and still function. So let's break it down to the cell level. So you can have up to 70% mutated mitochondria and still have a healthily functioning cell. It's right around 70%. It might be 65 for some cells. It might be a little over 70 for others, but the average is right around 70%. So you can have 70% of your mitochondria not working and still have a healthy cell.
Wow.
And the way disease happens is, over time, you get a higher and higher heteroplasmy rate. So as you approach that 70%, let's say it happens in your heart. Maybe you have very healthy mitochondria in your brain, but not so healthy in your heart. That's heart disease. And if you have a healthy heart, but not so much in your brain, that's neurodegeneration. And it can happen in different parts of your brain. So when it happens in your frontal lobes, that's Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
When it happens in the back, like in the substantia nigra, that's Parkinson's disease.
Wow.
So it affects, we all kind of have our weaker link. It just depends on our different exposures. So for example, if you're talking on your cell phone all the time, your mitochondria are very sensitive. They don't like inflammation. So when you talk on your phone, that creates inflammation. So if you talk on your phone all the time, you can create inflammation in your brain, and you're increasing the heteroplasmy rates in your brain, which could cause, potentially a tumor, or it could, potentially cause Alzheimer's disease or some other neurodegenerative disease to manifest faster than it otherwise would. And here's the thing, it's not just one thing. It's everything. It's like back in your, when you were in the food industry, using all these different chemicals to make flavors, those create inflammation. So a lot of people like to point their fingers at food. Yes. There's, I don't know how big glyphosate is in Australia. I'm pretty sure it's pretty big.
Huge.
That's something, it's everywhere. It's an environmental toxin because it's water soluble. So it gets in the rain and it rains down on organic crops. So our exposure to that creates inflammation. So, you've got processed food, you've got glyphosate, you've got lead in the water, right? You've got all these other chemicals that we're exposed to. And then you throw in EMS from your phone, from your Wi-Fi, from smart meters. So the body has to contend with all these things. So it's just when you add it all up, you get to a point where it's kind of like, an analogy I like to use is we all have a bucket. And, if you eat, Big Macs all day, that's going to add some stress to your bucket. If you have, a mean boss, if you work with people that are just jerks, and they're harassing you, that's adding stress to your bucket. That's inflammation. You know, if you are having challenges in your relationship, that's adding more stress. If you're exposed to a lot of EMFs, so some of us walk around with a pretty empty bucket, but some of us walk around with a relatively full bucket, and it doesn't take a whole lot to make it overflow. When your bucket overflows, that's when you get these different symptoms. So for some people, it's fatigue. For other people, it's anxiety. For others, it's pain. So it just kind of really depends on what you're contending with.
And why do you think, Nathan, that it seems that disease or chronic disease seems to manifest in the heart, the brain, the gut? Why is that?
That's a great question, because we have our highest density of mitochondria in our heart, in our brain, and we have a lot in our gut too. So the reason it manifests in our gut is things like glyphosate, things like processed foods. You eat them, causes inflammation in your gut. That's leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so most, as we've been talking about, most chronic disease is mitochondrial based. So they're going to show up first where you have the most mitochondria. So when you have, your heart, all the mitochondria, when they're spinning, making ATP, it actually puts off a magnetic field. And you can, if you have the right equipment, you can pick up that magnetic field 12 feet away.
Wow.
From a human. So it's, so we have a lot of mitochondria that are keeping that muscle beating constantly. If you think about it, you go to the gym, you can only do so many curls, right? You can only do so many bench presses before you fatigue, but your heart has to beat constantly. It takes a lot of energy. Your brain, it only makes up 3% of your body by volume, but it uses 20% of your body's energy. So when you're not making enough energy, it shows up in your brain pretty quick as, anxiety, depression, migraine headaches, brain fog, and eventually, when that goes on long enough, it can show up as neurodegeneration.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So I'll just side note a little bit, and I find this fascinating. A couple of points. Firstly, mitochondria, the theory of mitochondria being an endosymbiotic bacteria that embedded itself in a cell is it billions or whatever years ago. So that's fascinating that, the microbiome is this whole area of research on the bacteria, fungi, et cetera, that are happening in the body. And then if you think about it, these little mitochondria could be another type of microbiome, but living inside the cell. So I think that's just fascinating. And we're also seeing research that there's communication between the mitochondria and the microbiome as well in the gut. So that floors me. So that's one thing I found really fascinating. The other,
yeah, I haven't seen that research, but it doesn't surprise me one bit. So any kind of key takeaways from that?
I think that the takeaway is it's in its infancy. We're starting to just understand how these communication systems actually work. And we actually had Jack on the show. There was quite a few episodes ago.
Yeah, it was an awesome interview. I loved it.
And he started to go into some of those communication mechanisms on how, they're using methane and these different type of molecules to actually signal. So I find that fascinating. But the takeaway there, it's a hot new area of research. Watch that space. It'll be many years before we start to understand it fully. And it's all microbiome research is in its infancy, really. We don't really know much in that space. The other thing that I wanted to side note was that, because we're the Gut Health Gurus podcast, so I like to keep a little bit of gut focus as well. And so you mentioned the gut and how it's exposed to all this toxicity through glyphosate and processed foods and whatnot. And an interesting way to think about the digestive system as being outside of the body. So if you think about your skin that sits outside, you've also got another tube inside of you that's also outside the body. So this is how you actually allow food to come in, and then you absorb the food into the body. So the gut is actually the biggest interface to the outside world, even much more so than the skin. So hence, I think you highlighted this exposure to toxicity is, I think, my belief is because there's so much interface happening. So you're eating on average 3 meals a day. So there's so much absorption happening because we need to absorb stuff. We need to absorb nutrients out of the food, not just electrons and things like that. But along with that comes all the toxicity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a purely side note and reconnect why the gut is so important. And so we're pretty much coming up to time, but I have a burning question. Like, I really need to understand this more, and on how do we get the best out of CT? I mean, is a cold shower enough? How long do we have to CT to see the benefits? And then let's talk about some of the, I guess, the other heating type therapies after that as well.
Okay. Well, Krebin, it all depends on what you're dealing with. So if you're relatively healthy, I mean, anybody's going to get a benefit from taking a cold shower. They might hate it when they're doing it, but then they'll be like, I feel pretty good because you get a dopamine boost.
Yeah.
And it just feels pretty good.
Yes.
So for me, when I was dealing with Lyme disease, I was really sick. I was in a really bad place. So I worked up to about 25 minutes at, I think it was about 14 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
55 Fahrenheit. And even colder, I was going down to probably 10 degrees Celsius. And I was doing it about 4, maybe 5 times a week. Wow. So if people are interested, a good way to start out, and I would say if you're dealing with a bigger health challenge, cold showers probably aren't going to be enough. You will get some benefit, but when your body is completely submerged in water, there is kind of like you were saying that, the gut has more surface area than our skin, which makes perfect sense. I never thought about it like that. But, you have more water touching your skin when you're submerged versus on the shower.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll side note a little bit there, not to take away from the importance of the skin. I mean, the gut is important, but the skin is where you get the exposure to sunlight. So I just wanted to clarify that the skin is extremely important and equally as important as the gut. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no problem. So water conducts heat or lack of heat something like 24 times faster than air. So when you're in the shower, there's a combination of water and air. So some of that cold is being transferred to you, but at the same time, you've got air, and so it's not as much as fully submerging. So for people that are interested, that they kind of want to try it out, the easy way to get started is there's 3 steps. First step is doing ice water face dunks. So you fill up a bowl with ice water, you hold your breath, you dunk your face in there for as long as you can kind of stand the cold. And you do that, you rest 45, 60 seconds, and you do that 5 times. And when you can keep your face in the water for as long as you can hold your breath, you're ready for the next part, which is taking an ice pack and putting it on your torso. So you want to get a compression shirt. And with a compression shirt, it brings your blood capillaries closer to the surface. It helps you adapt a little quicker. So you start off with like 5 minutes with the ice pack. You work up to an hour. When you can do an hour, then you're ready for full body submersion. So ideally, you want to do what you do, like go in the ocean. Not all of us have an ocean to go into. I went for a swim in the lake where I live, and we're just coming off winter. It's been a cold spring, and the water is just completely freezing. It felt amazing. I just went in for a couple minutes, but I came out and I could just feel that cold like radiating off my body.
Wow.
It felt so good. But, if you don't have access to an ocean or a lake, you can fill your tub up with water. If it's not that cold, then you can either buy some bags of ice, or you can take a plastic container and make some ice blocks, which is a little more efficient than having to buy a bunch of bags of ice. So just, start off with wherever you're at. If you're a scaredy cat in the cold, and have semi-cold water and dunk your face in that. You don't have to have the water, in the single digits. But if you kind of like to go balls to the wall, then have the water in the single digits. Right? So it just kind of depends on where you are, and you just kind of experiment with it. You see how it makes you feel. If you start getting good results and you still have a big health condition, you're going to have to do more, and you're going to have to kind of stick with it for a while. If you're just like, I feel pretty good, but I want to feel better, you don't have to do as much. So it just depends on the individual. But I encourage everyone to try it. Do a cold shower. It also builds mental toughness, because you say you do it every single day. I'm sure going into it, it's still like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But then you force yourself to do it.
Yes.
And that's building up mental toughness, which is going to help you in other areas of your life. Because in order to be successful, we all have to do things that we don't want to do. So that's one thing I love about the cold, is it builds up that mental toughness. If you can get yourself to submerge your body in cold water, you can get yourself to do a lot of other things. So it's going to serve you in a lot of other areas of your life.
Totally. So then I love, Nathan, how you simplified it into some actionable steps and kind of almost having different stages of building up to your tolerance to cold. And I think you'll get to a point where, and for me, it's never easy to face that ocean and then dive into it, or turn off the hot water and stand under an ice shower. But you do build tolerance. And I find that after maybe 30 seconds, the body just adjusts and it doesn't feel that bad. And after you feel amazing. It's the feeling is like nothing that I've experienced in terms of euphoria and really lifting me in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it does feel so good.
And so just a little side note. So is there a point where, I guess, I just want to make sure we do the right thing for people listening. Is there a risk of having too much or hypothermia or something like that we should be mindful of, just to make sure we cover ourselves?
Yeah, you want to be smart about it. So you want to build up and increase your tolerance to cold. So if you've never done anything in the cold before and you live in a cold climate, you don't want to jump in an icy lake that's over your head, because the shock of the cold could literally make you drown. You could, go unconscious from it.
Wow.
So listen to your body. When I was doing it, I lived in the DC area when I first got into it, and I didn't have any options where I lived. The only place I could do it was in my tub. So, the first time I got in cold water, I did maybe 5 minutes. And then the next time I did maybe 7 minutes. And I would just kind of push myself as far as I could, but you get to a point where you're shivering, you're super cold. And, some of us will push more than others, but if you're doing it in water that's, 13, 14 degrees, and you listen to your body, you're not going to get frostbite. You're not going to get hypothermia. But, if you go outside and you do it in a super cold place, just be smart about it. Make sure if you go in a lake, it's shallow. Yes. So you can lower yourself down, as opposed to jumping in a place that's over your head where maybe you get into trouble, your hands get too numb, you can't pull yourself out or something like that. So just, use common sense.
Yes. That's a great tip. I think the takeaway for me listening to that, Nathan, is really walking into the beach. So walking into the cold water where you can still touch the ground, rather than jumping at the edge of a pier where you have to swim, because I guess if you edge your head and then you black out or something like that, then you're in trouble. So, and I see where my beach is at, there's often we have Aussie rules football in our neck of the woods. So you get the Aussie rules footballers, and a lot of those footballers.
They're like rugby?
It's kind of like rugby, but Australia has its own kind of unique rules in terms of football. It'll be weird for you guys to watch, but we love it. We're really passionate about it. And,
cool.
And I often see these elite level players come and they'll do their ice bath in the ocean. Okay. But and I think they do this for a safety reason as well. They literally walk from the shore in, and they get in about probably waist deep. I don't normally see them go more than waist, maybe because they're trying to heal inflammation or settle inflammation in the legs, because it's such a running game. But I guess, yeah, maybe be mindful of the upper body and the head when you're first starting. Certainly the head, so not diving straight into the ocean.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, and definitely no breath work in the ocean, because I know especially if you're just starting out, no breath work in water in general, because you could black out in a bathtub with breath work. So be very, very careful. With its Wim Hof type methods and things like that, you got to be very, very careful. So Nathan, how about some other mitochondrial tips? Any other nuggets you have for our audience?
Well, so let's do some more gut health.
Yeah,
gut
sure.
health tips. So one of the best things for your gut is to get sun exposure on your gut.
Wow.
So infrared light, red light, it penetrates up to 30 centimeters into your body. So the bacteria in your gut, they actually do like that light. So it's very good for your bacteria. And I'm not sure, are you familiar with molecular hydrogen?
Yeah. I'm certainly not an expert, but I have heard it pop up quite a bit.
Okay. So it's kind of a popular supplement. A lot of people are doing molecular hydrogen. But when you get sunlight on your gut, that actually makes molecular hydrogen in your gut. The natural way, the way you're supposed to make it. Right. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on that supplement. You can just go outside and expose your gut to the sun.
Mm-hmm. And at the moment, it's a little bit cold here in Melbourne. So I do still try and get out with my shirt off into the gloominess to get some sort of light on my body. Can we use something like a red light machine to get something equivalent or something close?
It shouldn't take the place of sunlight, but if you're just kind of trapped in a very gloomy, very cold place, then absolutely. I've got a near infrared bulb right up here. I don't have it on right now.
Yes.
But it's really cold where I live. So when I'm working at my desk on the computer, lots of times I'll turn on this near infrared light. Now the good thing about infrared light is it can penetrate your clothing. So, if you have like a super thick goose down jacket on, it's not going to go through that. But if you're wearing a shirt like you're wearing, or just like a sweater like me, if I go outside, I'm not getting into the UV light, but the infrared light is penetrating into my body right through my clothes. So you're still getting the benefits of infrared light. Here's another thing for people to consider is historically, most of us used incandescent bulbs to light our homes.
Absolutely.
But over the past couple of years, there's been a big shift to switch to more energy efficient bulbs, fluorescent and LED. So they don't have any infrared light in them. So if you're still able to get incandescent bulbs or even halogen bulbs, I would go with that, even though incandescent bulbs are a pain because they blow out a lot faster. They're not as energy efficient. You're going to spend more money on your electrical bill, but you're getting a good health benefit from that, because you're getting that anytime you're inside with those lights, you're still getting that infrared light that now is absent from a lot of people's lives. So, so anytime you can get sunlight on your gut, and your gut, goes, this goes from your mouth all the way to your butt, basically.
Yes, that's it.
So you want to get that sunlight on your entire front. But that's one of the best things you can do to really maintain good gut health.
Yeah, absolutely. And the body is this is a trap we fall into. We kind of segment and put things in little buckets and focus on it individually. But I think I love this approach where we're incorporating lots of holistic techniques that can translate to optimal health right throughout the body, including the gut. And I think most cells in the body would have mitochondria. I think is it only the blood cells that don't have mitochondria, or is there other cells that don't have mitochondria?
Yeah, the red blood cells do not.
They do not. So mitochondria they're so important, and they're so important for your gut health, just to get them functioning properly, because the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And also, we didn't really go into it, but producing that naturally depleted deuterium water as well. But
Yeah, that's a really good point. So a lot of people that have gut issues, that the cells in their gut build up these high levels of deuterium. So your gut is supposed to turn over every 2 to 3 days, but when you have a lot of deuterium in there, it doesn't turn over, and
Right.
that's why this gut. I mean, gut problems have just exploded.
Yes.
It's because one other thing we didn't mention is that having your cell phone close to your gut, that causes a leaky gut too.
Oh,
So holding
wow.
your cell phone up to your brain, that opens up your blood-brain barrier.
Yes.
Holding your cell phone, if you put it in your pocket, not only is it bad for your sex organs, whether
Yes.
you're a woman, it's bad for your gut too, because you're still getting that radiation on your gut, and you're getting that chronic stress on your gut, so it never has a chance to heal. It's not able to kind of deplete that deuterium that gets trapped in your gut lining.
Mm.
So and like using your laptop. You should never use your laptop on your lap.
Yeah.
You should always have some distance. But just something else to be mindful of is when you're around appliances, like a blender. When you turn on your blender to make your smoothie, you don't want to stand super close to it, because for a lot of us, it's at our gut level. It's on our counter in our kitchen,
That's
and
it.
that's caused. So you're trying to do something healthy, drink something healthy, but you're making your smoothie. You're actually opening up your gut lining from
Yeah.
that EMF exposure. So it's something else to be mindful to as well.
Wow, Nathan, that's such an excellent point. Just to be mindful of, we're trying to adopt these healthy habits to make smoothies and whatnot, but just having that mindfulness to think about the appliances around us, like microwave ovens or anything that might be emitting these EMF frequencies and radiation, because then we're kind of really defeating the purpose of having that healthy smoothie, because we're bombarding ourselves with radiation on top of
Yeah.
it. So I never actually thought of it that way. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I
No,
think
my pleasure.
this is a great time to start to wrap up. We're almost coming up to an hour. And yeah, if there was one thing that our audience could do for their gut health, what would it be?
Get some sun on your gut.
Love it.
So go out, watch the sunrise, and if you're able to take your shirt off, or even just kind of lift up your shirt some, but get as much of that gut exposed to the sun in the morning. And plus, watching the sunrise sets your circadian rhythm. So you want to get that natural light in your eyes. No sunglasses. You want to have your glasses up, but your gut has a circadian rhythm too. And when your circadian rhythm is off in your gut, you're going to have different gut issues over time. So just that one thing, going out, watching the sunrise every morning, getting that stimulus in your eye, so your brain clock knows what time it is. It coordinates with all the other clocks, and your other organs, including your gut, work a whole lot better.
Absolutely. I love that, Nathan. That's some great advice, and past advice from Dr. Jack Kruse has been on the show. So guys, go back and listen to that episode. It's amazing. So Nathan, people love what you're saying. They want to reach out to you. They want to connect with you. They want to work with you. How do they find you on the internet, on the interwebs and the socials?
Yeah, so I do most of my posting on Facebook. So it's just under my name, Nathan Walls. My website is journeytooptimalhealth.com. I do a little bit of posting on Instagram, and that's Journey to Optimal Health. Yeah, just Journey to Optimal Health. But if people are interested in improving their mitochondrial health, if you go to my website, journeytooptimalhealth.com, you can get my top 9 biohacks to improve your mitochondrial health. So we talked about a lot of those today in this interview, but I do have links to videos where I've gone into details. For example, on using the sauna, like all the benefits of the sauna. I have some videos on the 3 steps for cold thermogenesis.
Wow.
And there's a couple other videos on there too that kind of go into the why of why you want to do these different biohacks, and how it like scientifically how it's benefiting you and helping you out.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nathan. And you look amazing for being 47. So you must be doing something right. So guys,
Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun being on the show.
My pleasure, Nathan. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care, Kermit. Bye.
Thank you.